this is just, quite frankly, another country that they're going to have to shell out for. But I think, at the same time, the question is, the longevity of this. And, if Trump is satisfied that he's getting what he wants, Delcy and the Chavistas can drag this thing out and hope that they're not going to have to cede power or actually organize elections.
When America's dramatic military intervention in Venezuela at the start of this year ended with socialist President Nicolas Maduro arrested, then charged in a New York court, Donald Trump hailed it as an extraordinary victory for the United States and the Venezuelan people. They could look forward to a free democratic future, he said. He promised that the country's political prisoners would be released. Well, just weeks later, the situation is less clear-cut. Foro Penal, a campaign group acting on behalf of detainees, now says that 444 political prisoners have been released, but hundreds still remain behind bars. Trump's chief preoccupation right now seems to be Venezuela's oil. He has plans to visit the South American country, apparently, and his energy secretary has been pushing the acting socialist president, Delcy Rodríguez, to reopen its oil sector to U.S. companies. Brett Bruen is a former American diplomat with experience on the front lines of crises in Venezuela. Brett Bruen, welcome to the Times at 1. Let's start with the situation as you see it today. How much leverage is Donald Trump actually applying to the still socialist government of Delcy Rodríguez?
Well, it seems as though he's applying leverage, certainly with respect to oil. There have been, as you noted, a few political prisoners released, but what we haven't seen are those democratic reforms, the beginnings of preparations for elections. Even what I've been calling for a while is a transition government. Having worked not just in Venezuela but in civil wars in Africa, often what you would see is a government that comes into place where there is some level of power sharing. That would be an essential step to a return to normalcy in Venezuela, and we're just not seeing it.
I think many of our listeners will be attending to what's happened in Venezuela and wondering whether, in the end, it's just another example of how deeply transactional, some would say cynical, Donald Trump is, and the degree to which there is any sort of commitment to democracy, freedom, values alongside the transactional desires that he's got.
Well, I do think that Trump sees the world through green-colored glasses. The notion that
green, as in the dollar.
In the dollar,
nothing to do with the environment.
That's true. And yet, at the same time, there is another important element of superficiality. Trump wants the prizes for him, the military operation that successfully extracted Hugo Chavez, or I should say Nicolas Maduro. I'm showing my time in Venezuela from power. That was, a prize that he could hold up for propaganda purposes. And you're seeing that play out in other places as well, whether it's Gaza, Ukraine, or a whole host of other crises, or, as he claims, peace that he has
maybe, and this is germane to a discussion I was having on the Times at 1 yesterday, maybe even Iran as well.
Yeah, Iran's an interesting one because it seems as though he's very much pushing to topple the regime, and yet obviously they are meeting, just wrapped up meetings in the Gulf, looking at whether or not there is a path forward. I think ultimately Trump is going to see the appeal of another quote unquote peace that he can arrange as attractive. And so we'll have to wait and see. The Iranian leaders are in a tough spot right now with the economy and the sanctions that Trump has imposed on them. So they may be willing to give up more than they have in the past.
Now, let me bring you back to Venezuela, because it strikes me there's one particularly interesting perspective on all of this. I'm going to ask you to put yourself in the mindset of María Corina Machado, who, of course, is the Venezuelan opposition leader who won the Nobel Peace Prize. and then visited Donald Trump and actually gave him the award in an effort, of course, to make sure that she was in his good books, and I guess to persuade Donald Trump to back her as the long-term new leader of Venezuela. All of that effort she's made doesn't seem to have worked. Do you think she, and indeed the wider Venezuelan opposition, are now bitter and resentful about Donald Trump and the way he's handling Venezuela?
Well, there is certainly a lot of resentment amongst the Venezuelan opposition, not least because, by most accounts, they won the last election. So this is not your classic case of opposition trying, to claim legitimacy. They actually have the votes to show that they should be in power. And Trump kind of swept all of that aside and decided, for practical reasons, to deal with Delcy Rodríguez, Maduro's number two. And up until now, she's been fairly, according to what he has shared, compliant with the U.S. demands. At this stage, I think what you're seeing is María Corina is trying to play the long game, expecting that Delcy and the Chavistas are going to trip up, are going to fall out of favor with Trump, and then, she and the opposition will be waiting in the wings.
As you indicated, Delcy Rodríguez and her team appear to have sort of washed their hands of Maduro to a certain extent and want a working relationship with Donald Trump. If they're to have one, it does mean, it seems, that they're going to have to give the Americans huge sort of leverage over the oil industry and invite all of the American oil majors to make vast profits out of Venezuela's oil reserves. Do you think that is actually going to happen?
Well, it appears to be on course to happen at this stage. It appears to be a price that the Chavistas are willing to pay in order to stay in power. And look, I mean, they already are paying quite a high price to China, to the drug traffickers for, all of the support that they have given. So, this is just, quite frankly, another country that they're going to have to shell out for. But I think, at the same time, the question is, the longevity of this. And, if Trump is satisfied that he's getting what he wants, Delcy and the Chavistas can drag this thing out and hope that they're not going to have to cede power or actually organize elections.
So a final thought, if you were one of the hundreds of political prisoners still languishing in jail in Venezuela, probably best not to get your hopes up of a release anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually on the political prisoner front, you will see that take place because that has been a symbolic step that the regime has been willing to make. I think it's, if I'm an opposition political figure, I'm not preparing my election campaign quite yet.
All right. Well, Brett Bruen, it's been a pleasure to have you on Times at One. That's Brett Bruen, former American diplomat with long experience in Venezuela. Thanks for joining us.